lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Matt Williams got a brilliant start from the third row of the grid.
He's gone, he's hit him, he's straight off at the chase.
A half-second lead. Oh, with the sizzling car in the background.
He has, oh, he's round on the last lap.
There's a massive accident.
Next to the inside, what a move, what a move.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the GT3 series for Automobilista Australia for 2019. Hard to believe it's been a month since we had a GT3 race. We, of course, were scheduled to have this round, the fourth round, here at Hockenheimring about 2 weeks ago, which would have fallen on the Bathurst weekend, and the admins had elected at short notice to postpone that round for another 2 weeks, just to give everybody the happy Bathurst Day they deserved. Hence, the whole schedule has just been rearranged, but we're still going to finish around about early December. So that means the Hockenheimring was pushed back to tonight, Sunday the 27th of October, the halfway point of the GT3 season, Season 2 of GT3 for 2019. My name is Steve DeVries, aka Nether. I'm going to be joined by Josh Bagzy Bags in a few short moments. He's just a little bit tied up at the moment and making his way to the commentary box, so hopefully we'll see him before race start, and I'm sure he'll have a whole bunch of comments about what we can possibly expect for tonight's GT3 action. Well, as we said, it's the halfway point of the season, and there is the reshuffled calendar for you. So, of course, the first three events there, Sydney Motorsport Park, Spa-Francorchamps and Brands Hatch, the three events that have taken place already, and then the Hockenheimring tonight, which has been moved forward or moved backward by 2 weeks. And then we have a pretty fast and furious end to the season. So another 2 weeks from now, we will head over to Jerez, and then back-to-back races to finish out the season. Zandvoort, Fuji and Adelaide, all in consecutive weeks, over 3 consecutive weeks. So just the 60-minute affair tonight, and then still 3 90-minute races out of the 4 rounds that will remain after tonight's proceedings are over. Points coming into tonight's affair. Well, 3 wins from 3 race starts for Lewis Wedding. There's nothing that you can poke a sharp stick at any other way to say that he has been dominant. He, of course, has been pushed all the way. In the last race was probably the one that he won comfortably, or most comfortably, run it in a bit of a canter. The first round at Sydney Motorsport Park, he did have a challenge from Brenton Foley early on, and then there was that really big, well, actually what we call really big wow finish to the race at Spa-Francorchamps after 90 minutes, the cars being separated by less than a second at the finish line. Actually it was a car that was pretty much a front nose was the gap at the end of that race. So hence Foley is in second place and still within striking distance of Lewis Wedding. Will Devonish has closed the margin down after the last round at Brands Hatch, and he sits only 4 points back of Foley. And then Steve Bolger, unfortunately absent tonight at this stage. Doesn't look like he'll be making it. And then there's quite a gaggle of cars there in the mid-pack. So from Greg Turra down all the way to Mike Coulston at the bottom, they're only separated by 6 points. And there's quite a very, very furious number of drivers there looking to, well, what you call it, grab, beg and steal and borrow as much as they can to try and climb over each other. And of course the 2 classes, so the leading Silver Cup runner is Termo, ahead of Mike Coulston, and that is purely on the results that we have here. So a pair of 9th places for Mike Coulston and a 10th and an 8th for Termo. So therefore Termo's best result of 8th is what is giving him the tiebreaker in terms of points there at the moment. And there's actually a couple of other drivers a bit further down the order that are pretty close on points, but not quite tied as well. So we've had 20 runners so far in the series. Looks like we've got about 14 tonight, so a relatively reasonable turnout for tonight's proceedings. Speaking of tonight's proceedings, it is the Hockenheimring, the on-again, off-again, on-again, off-again Formula One venue that has played host to quite a number of great Formula One races, including this year. over the course of its history. 2.84 Ks, clockwise circuit, 16 corners in total. We're set for a 60-minute race tonight, so we expect, but judging by the race paces that we're starting to see, it's going to be 1 minute 37s at best, and into the more likely 38s, 39s and 40s. We'll get somewhere in the realm of about 36 to 40 laps, just depending on how things go. Things to watch out for. One of the things that's going to get brought up in the driver's briefing, no doubt, is going to be the off-track excursions at turn 1. It's a high-speed approach and a turn that you just need to work out how much curb do you actually want to take, and if you take too much, are you going to be escorted wide and then having to rejoin the circuit? So we expect there'll be a number of cars, especially in the opening couple of laps, that will run wide at turn 1. Happens quite often in Formula 1. There's multiple heavy braking zones on this track as well, which are the prime passing opportunities. So turn 2, which is essentially just as you get to the end of sector 1. So you go round turn 2, 3, 4, and you end sector 1. So that's a hard stop. The most obvious one is turn 6, the hairpin at the top end of the circuit, which is the top right corner of your screen on the mini-map to the right there. That's turn 6. And then all the way down to turn 8 is also quite a hard stop as you drag out of the hairpin and head back towards the stadium section of the circuit. So multiple heavy braking zones, which means multiple passing zones as well, if you're close enough to make that happen. And the third thing is you do need a car that can handle both the high speed of the runs to the hairpins and out of the hairpins, the high speeds that some of these corners require, and also the medium and low speed corners. So it's a car that you need to have good balance in terms of good top speed and good handling, and we've seen top speeds getting around about the 260 to 263 k's per hour mark on the drag down to the hairpin. So that's coming out of turns 2, 3 and 4 around the parabolica curve at turn 5, and then before you get to the braking zone for turn 6. So not the sorts of high speeds you get in Formula 1, but that's the setup that a lot of the drivers have gone for in the practice. As we see just off our screen, Brenton Foley's getting his drifting on, so you wouldn't want to be doing too much of that, but certainly not the type of high speeds that we have come to expect at some of the other circuits like Spa-Francorchamps. I'm just waiting for the last little bits of the practice session to tick over at the moment. We're not too far away, and if we go over and have a bit of a look and see what exactly is happening at the moment, the clock has just gone 0, and Brenton Foley's the only man at the moment to set a lap time inside a minute 38, so 1:37.8. He was a 1:37.999 for a couple of minutes, and he's just lowered that benchmark by about a tenth and a little bit. As we said, good turnout so far, 14 runners in the server. The only man not to set a lap time so far is Phil Boak, and I believe he's actually out there on the circuit at the moment. And if we've actually just ticked over into the qualifying session now, so he actually didn't get enough time out to put a lap time on the board, which is a bit of a shame. But we now set ourselves for a 15-minute qualifying session, and lo and behold, Brenton Foley is the first man to get to the end of the pit lane to await the green light. So that's a little bit of an interesting move. It's normally the likes of Lewis Wedding and a few others that are up that end of the pit lane that want to get out first. Now, qualifying tonight will be a little bit of a different kettle of fish for some drivers. There are a few drivers with some overhanging penalties from the race a month ago. Now, one of those is Lime Mitch, who's actually just there in the 333 car. He actually has a qualifying ban for this race, so that's quite interesting that he's actually being allowed to go out. He's there in that Ferrari in the pit lane, the 333 car, which is most unusual. I'm not sure if he's aware that he actually has got the qualifying ban or not, but it's himself and Greg Turra that have qualifying bans, or listed down as having qualifying bans coming into tonight's race, and that was for incidents out of the Brands Hatch round. Just looking at our notes from the stewards review, the Greg Turra ban came around as a result of a turn 1 lap 1 incident where Turra and Foley were running side by side, and Turra forced Foley off the circuit, And it was a similar story with Lime Mitch forcing Tara off the circuit at turn 4 on lap 1. So lap 1 was a little bit of a difficult opening lap for a number of drivers at the last race. And one of the drivers who's not here tonight is Brendan Ross. He actually had a qualifying ban for contact between himself and Mike Coulston, where he forced Coulston off the track. And then there's another incident with Coops, and his qualifying ban was actually upgraded to a pit lane start. So by virtue of the fact he's not here, he's not going to be serving those qualifying bans and the pit lane start tonight. Looks like we've got most of the cars out there on the circuit, actually. The only two drivers not out there at the moment is Greg Turra and Lewis Wedding. So they were second and third quickest, respectively, going into the practice session, or actually out of the practice session. They're now in the garage just waiting to see what happens. The first man's going to be Brenton Foley to set some lap times, and there's a huge gaggle of cars behind him. If we'll see if we can get a bit of a shot from the front straight. So there's Osrob, Lime Mitch, and then a bit further behind them we've also got the cars of Termo, Mike Coulston and Rhodey all together, as well as Foley's had a bit of a moment there on the exit of turn 1, which we did speak about as a turn that you can very, very easily overcommit and run wide, and locking the inside front under the heavy braking into turn 2. We get our first sector split now as a 21.4. So banking some lap at the moment. We've seen times in the mid 20 point, about 20.5, 20.6 in the practice session. And now the second of the heavy braking zones down here in a straight line on the run down to the hairpin turn 6. And a number of the other drivers following suit. So here's Will Devonish. He's behind Rhodey on the road there, and just ahead of one of the Taras. Oh, we've got someone around. It looks like that's Termo, who just went around at the hairpin, and indeed it was. That's the Chevy Camaro, and it's done the right thing in getting out of the way there, letting the rest of the field through. Let's return to our man who is doing his best to hunt down Lewis Wedding at the moment. He's second in the standings, trails by 13 points coming into tonight. A little bit wild on the exit there, just at the second timing intermediate, coming back into this stadium section, which is where you need the good car balance. The number 074 got 2 corners to go, and then the opening salvo in this qualifying session will be the marker that everybody tries to chase. At the moment, nobody really making any inroads into the time. And it's a 37.3 for Foley, so not a bad effort to start with. It's much, much quicker than he did run in that practice session. Of course, we did see some lap times, or some sector times, that were doing 20.6s and 20.5s through Sector 1. And Foley having trouble again locking up into turn 2. And already not too far off his previous marker. So time's coming in quickly. Will Devonish surpassing his teammate Osrob into P2 at the moment. Noah Tara was an early pace setter in the practice session just gone. Coulston, Lime Mitch and Rhodey have all set their times, and there's actually been a few drivers that have had their times deleted already. So looking down the order, obviously Sermo has got a time that is not going to really trouble the time screens at the moment, and himself and Brian Walsh had their times deleted. Let's go back and have a bit of a look. So his second place man, Will Devonish, again on the road, just ahead of Rhodey. And his teammate a bit further up the road is Osrob in the 555 car. So you've got the 555 car of Osrob. And then the white and black number 15 car belonging to Will Devonish. So they're looking more from a team's championship point of view. But I'm sure they would also love to be chasing some of the wins that are on offer. It's probably one of the best opportunities they're going to get. Will's not too far away from Foley, about quarter second, but well up on his PB at the moment. Foley was a bit sluggish through the first sector, lost a little bit of time, but he was purple through the middle sector, so he might lower the mark here again, and he does. He lowers it by a 1/10. He'd set a purple middle sector on that last lap, so now into the 37.2s. We might yet crack a 36. We did expect that we might get a 36 in qualifying trim, where the race pace is more or less supposed to be around the 37s and 38s. I've just seen Lime Mitch jump up into P3, so splitting the two of the JP Simshed cars. In actual fact, he's been surpassed immediately by Phil Boak, who we just said before hasn't had a great deal of running in that car in the last, well, not much the last couple of weeks, but also tonight as well. He didn't even turn a lap in practice. So hopefully he'll be all right come the 60-minute race that lies ahead. Still waiting to see who's out there on the track. I'm going to see Lewis Wedding is finally out there on an outlap, I believe, at the moment. If we try and pick him up, yes, he is indeed on the outlap. So he's just rounding turn 5 at the moment. Is he on the track currently? So he's tucked in behind. Termo's the next man ahead of him on the road. He's probably got about 6 seconds or so between the two cars. So still plenty of track space. But when we look at the third place man here with Phil Boak, and then sitting behind him, there's a little bit of a gaggle of cars. 8th place man Rhodey, and then behind him 14th place man Termo. So there could still be a little bit of a gap between some of these drivers to allow them a bit more space to set their respective lap times. Lock up there for Boat going into the Sachs Curve as part of the stadium section here. Very, very wild on the exit too of Sachs Curve. It would have cost him a little bit of time. That would have been an unwanted slide. And he rounds the final couple of corners. What's he looking like on the timesheets at the moment? As Mike Coulston pops up into P4. That's a good job by him in the Acura. And no further improvement for Phil Boak, although he's just been pushed back down to 4th, immediately surpassed by a great lap from Termo. So a 38.357 for Termo pushes him down the order. 3 men in the pits at the moment: Greg Tara, Mike Coulston, Will Devonish. Of course, Greg Tara having that ban for qualifying that he needs to abide by. Not sure what will happen with Lime Mitch after this, having taken part as he just pulls off the road out of the back of shot there. Not sure what will happen with Lime Mitch and his qualifying ban, either carrying over or what will happen as a result of him not abiding by his ban, I should say. Let's have a look at what Lewis Wedding's got in store at the moment. So he's gone through Sector 1 in a 21.3, so that's pretty handy. Not a purple sector, but it's looking pretty good compared to some of the other sector times we're seeing out there. Let's see what he can do when he gets down to Sector 2, which is just out of between turns 10 and 11. So turn 10 here, and then we'll get a reading about halfway down this chute to turn 11. There it is. So he's only 1.5 tenths away from the pole time at the moment. So if he tracks like this, he will jump up onto the provisional front row of the grid. He'll split Foley and Devonish, and he will set a 37 if that is the case. So only 2 men in the 37 so far, Foley and Devonish. But that will most likely change when this man crosses the line in a couple of seconds' time. Looking very, very handy to set a 37, and he does. He sets a 37.268, so fractionally slower than Foley, not by very much. So provisional front row with 6 minutes remaining in this session, and not a lot more movement on the board at the moment. But again, little lock up from Wedding. We've seen Foley do that into turn 2, and looks like he's not the only one, although sets a purple first sector here, Lewis Wedding, a 20.366, or a 21.366 I should say. He's got clear track ahead as well, so pressing on. Termo tucked in behind, looking to try and pick up as much of a draft as he can. Car turning beautifully through the turn 6 hairpin for Lewis Wedding. Has to be said, that car looked very, very planted. Noah Turra jumps up the order to P4 as well now, so as we said, he was quite an early pace setter in the practice session. He's now moved up to P4, so that's a great job in the Lone Wolf and Cubs driver. The only one representing in this qualifying session, with Father Greg sitting this one out. Oh, and there's nothing in it. Lewis Wedding's up on his PB, but have a look at the margin to P1. It is 1/1000th of a second. And a lock up ahead of Lewis Wedding. So who's he tucked in behind? He was tucked in behind the 69 car. And oh, that was a little bit awkward. Might just have a bit of another look at that on the replay and see if he did get affected by that. So he was tucked in behind. It's on the onboard shot. I believe the 69 car is Coops. Yeah, a little bit of a balk there. So A little bit of bad luck for Lewis Wedding, just coming across a drive. I'm not sure if Coops was actually on a fast lap at all or not. But just sort of come across him at the wrong moment. Foley, meanwhile, has set a 21.5 in the first sector. He's not really making any further impressions on his own time at the moment. It looks like most of the lap times are coming on about the second or third lap of a stint right now. So a number of drivers are out there for a while before they set some times, and Foley's going to have to go again. And indeed, it was the 69 car at Coops that Lewis Wedding came across in the stadium section of the circuit. And Coops is continuing on at the moment, just down at turn 8, and now left at 9 and then right at 10. So we'll get a read on him at the moment. Currently on a 42.37, and looks like he's going to potentially shave a half a second off his PB if he can keep this pace up. And now the tricky stadium section of circuit. This Sachs curve's actually cambered in a little bit, so you can use the camber to your advantage. He's actually got a faster car in behind him of Ozrob as well. Now Ozrob's going to, look to try and stick the nose down there at the second to last corner. Now Coops is on a flying lap, so he was entitled to a bit of space, but that probably would have put him off, I'd imagine, with Ozrob having a bit of a look there at trying to get past him. So that, of course, has cost him some time. He probably wouldn't have been expecting that. 2 minutes 50 to go. And Ozrob, I think, probably may not have realised that Coops was on a fast lap there. But it was a little bit of an ambitious move to possibly try and stick his head down the inside at turn 15. This big drag, long drag up to the hairpin at turn 6. So with the braking performance here, Ozrob sends it very, very early. So he wants track position now. He doesn't want to risk that happening again down at the last couple of corners. Now, where's he in the order? He's currently 9th. There's a 21.7 through the first sector. Very, very wide at the apex of turn 8 there, actually. So it'll cost him a little bit more time. What's his sector split like through sector 2? So he's 0.2 off the PB. Of course, in the background there, the drag strip for the Hockenheimring, just out of turn 11, runs from turn 11 down through turns 15 and 16. Now, Brenton Foley, we're just seeing, has set a purple sector 1. He set a sector 1 time of a 21.365, which is actually a thousandth quicker than the best one that Lewis Wedding had done, so not much in it at all. So we're going to keep an eye on him with interest as drivers trying to get across the line now to start some final flying laps. Let's actually pick up our current provisional pole sitter. What's his sector 2 like? Coming down to the Mobil 1, turn 11. He actually lost a lot of time, so he must have made a mistake somewhere on that lap, because that's a lot of time to lose after setting a purple sector 1. So he's going to go again. He will get some time. He's probably going to be the last man, I'd suspect, that would get another lap in. The next lot of cars are Lewis Wedding, Noah Turra, and Lime Mitch, and they've actually just come out of the hairpin. So Foley will get across the line with 30 seconds remaining on the clock to start another lap. Let's see if we can see where Wedding is. So, yeah, Wedding's going to be too far back here. He will not get another lap. What was his opening sector like? It was a 21.5. So he's 2.5 tenths down on not only his PB, but 4 tenths down on Foley heading into the Sachs curve. So this is his last flying lap. So currently he's going to be on the 3rd row. I dare say, unless one of the other drivers behind is on a better lap than Lewis, there's not going to be much improvement here. Foley can probably take it easy. He's actually done a 21.5 in the first sector, Foley, so probably realises that Lewis wasn't on a quick lap. The only man that can really unseat Foley at the moment is Will Devnish. Now, where's he on the circuit? He's coming into the Sachs curve right now. So 21.5 first sector, 45.3 second sector. So it's not setting the timing screens alight here In actual fact, it's going to be quite a substantial distance off, I think. He's going to push on regardless. And it's going to be probably a high 37. Yeah, it's a 37.6. So he pushed on with the end of it, but at the end of the day, he falls 25 thousandths shy of Usurping Folly. In actual fact, he was 35 thousandths ahead of Wedding. So the top 3 times there, Foley on a 37.209, Devonish a 37.234, and Wedding a 37.268. So very, very close there. And the last man across the line was Phil Boak to put himself P7. So that is the qualifying session over. So a pole for Brenton Foley, which I think might actually be the first pole, if memory serves me correctly, outside of Lewis Wedding actually taking pole in the first couple of races. Of course, Lewis has won the opening 3 races of the season. But a little bit of a lull now as we go into a driver's briefing in between sessions. And it's now a privilege to welcome Josh Bagzy Bags into commentary. Bagzy, good to have you aboard again after a month's absence.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I apologise to the viewers for being late. Completely forgot about GT3 racing today. Went to watch the cricket and Adelaide Oval, and then watched MotoGP with another Automobilista commentator stairs, and then totally forgot about the time and had to rush home at exactly the speed limit if Sapol is listening.
Yes, we'll certainly say that you did get home at the speed limits. We don't discourage, or we don't encourage breaking speed limits, rather. But you're right, we did have quite a lot of motorsport and just a lot of sport in general on in this country today. We, of course, had the Gold Coast 600 this weekend, MotoGP, the cricket, and I must say the MotoGP was a cracking race for quite a lot of it, and I'm sure you'll concur.
Yeah, it definitely was. I won't spoil anything here in case people haven't seen it, but definitely go have a look at it if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly was a highlight of the calendar down there at Phillip Island this afternoon. Well, Bagzy, what I'm going to do is we'll bring up the race info again, because you obviously missed a little bit of this, but we'll bring it up for the viewers and for yourself again. Of course, we've got a 60-minute encounter around what I deemed the on-again, off-again, on-again, off-again Formula 1 circuit, the Hockenheimring. It can deliver some really good racing. Of course, we've seen earlier this year in Formula 1 that it was an absolutely cracking race, and to find out that's not on the calendar for next year is a bit heartbreaking. But this can be a really tricky little circuit to get right. There's plenty that can go wrong if you don't pay attention, especially through turns like turn 1, braking for some of these hard stops on the circuit as well. You've got to be careful around here.
You certainly do, and as if anyone asks Sebastian Vettel how his 2018 German Grand Prix went, he will remind you that the stadium section is a bit of a sore point. Doesn't take much, and you're in the grass/gravel. It's a very narrow section compared to the rest of the track, and it's been the same for, apart from some slight reprofilings, pretty much since the circuit was built. Even when it was the long blast through the forest, this little tricky stadium section was always there to catch people out at the end of the lap.
Yeah, the stadium section, of course, is probably one of the highlights for me, because it's one of the parts of the circuit where your car balance really starts to come into play. Of course, you've got to set up for the high-speed parts of this circuit, and then the stadium section pretty much takes all that away. The medium-speed corners, cambered corners, quick changes of direction through it's kind of like a chicane in turns 13 and 14. So you've got to have a car that can perform well in all parts of this circuit, and that's where the stadium section can, as we have seen in the past, bring people undone.
Yeah, it certainly does. Also coming into, I believe it's turn 9 where the Mercedes grandstand is.
Yeah, turn 8, the hard braking stop into turn 8, and then turn 9, the left-hander shortly after that.
Yeah, overtaking zone, but also very tricky if you haven't got it quite right. And the turn before that is flat out in F1 car. I'm not sure if it's flat out in these GT cars or not, having not been watching the racing so far, but it can be tricky if it's not full throttle.
Yeah, there might be a little bit of just a confidence lift, I think, through turn 7, just to make sure that you position the car in the right spot for the braking zone. Of course, you need a little bit more of a braking zone at high speed in these GT3 cars. They don't stop on a dime like the Formula 1 cars do, so need to sort of be a bit further over to the right-hand side of the circuit on the approach to turn 8. So I dare say there will be a little bit of some drivers' confidence lifting, but then again, some people like Foley, Wedding, Devonish, I'd expect might actually be taking it at a bit quicker pace than some of these other drivers will. The one thing that'll be getting reinforced in the driver's briefing right now is one of the points I have on the screen there, and that's the off-track excursions at turn 1. So turn 1, you've obviously got the curb on the inside. You don't want to take a huge amount of that, otherwise you're going to upset the car, send it wide, and then you're going to end up having to try and rejoin the track safely. So that'll be getting enforced in the driver's briefing. Of course, we did have a little bit of bump and grind at the last race at Brands Hatch as well. So there will be a number of points being brought up about just making sure that the driving standards are held high for the remainder of the season.
Sorry, having
A little bit of drama on that side. But one thing that we probably should bring up, just so people will be aware that there's still a little bit of racing to go in the season, and that's the AMSO's Super 2 season. So there's 3 races to go for that one coming up. So we'll just put the calendar on the screen now. So a couple of days from now, we're going to have the Sydney Motorsport Park round, which is substituting for the Gold Coast for this year. Then another 2 weeks to November 14th for Sandown, and another 2 weeks to that for the final Oran Park, substituting for Newcastle. So only 3 rounds left in that. And believe it or not, the pole man in this race, the GT3 race, Brenton Foley, has taken the lead for the first time at the last round, the endurance race at Mount Panorama. So definitely not over and done with in Super 2, definitely not over and done with in GT3 for the season. So pretty much all the seasons are going to wind up here in Automobilista Australia, finishing around early December, and then there'll be a little bit of a break until we get to the new year and all the new calendars are decided.
all right. Let's check this microphone's working again.
Yep, we've got you on the comms there, so we've fixed a few things. So, Bagzy, just getting your thoughts, because of course you were part of the very big broadcast team for the ASC Bathurst 1000 not too long ago. Give us your thoughts on how all that went down. It certainly looked like it was a very well produced and put together broadcast over there.
Yeah, it went quite well, and kudos to Stairs for his brilliant setup that he's made for that. We had multiple machines running Automobilista, so we could have multiple angles, and he's quite good at setting up a broadcast booth. And even when he wasn't commentating, the rest of us could quite easily still work it. He's set it up quite well, and all his graphics and everything made it run quite smoothly, and everyone had a very good race. We only had 2 technical retirements from computer issues, so it was very fun to commentate. It was a good day being able to commentate all that, so it was quite fun. And if you want to watch the replay, it's up on YouTube, so feel free to watch that.
Yes, absolutely right. And the Super 2 for myself on this channel, and then you've also got the Automobilista Supercars coming to from the Automobilista Supercars YouTube channel. Well, we're just seeing some pictures now. The drivers have just come out of the drivers briefing, so they'll be just getting a couple of laps under their belts. So we've got Coops and Lime Mitch currently out there on the circuit right now. And if we look a bit further afield, there are also Will Devonish is out there, so too Brian Walsh and Mike Coulston. And a couple of drivers, I think, just maybe coming out just to practice some pit ins and pit exits. Of course, it looks like it's going to be a one-stop race. We tend to get about 30 minutes a tank for the GT3 races, so 60 minutes. You do the math, that equates to one stop, or 2 if you're pushing the limits like Coops is just down there at turn number 11 and skating out the other side of the gravel trap.
Yeah, it's the one problem with half-hour races is you don't get a second stop or the potential of a second stop, so everyone will be able to make it on one stop. It just depends on when you take that one stop.
And Brian Walsh, another driver, making a bit of an off-track excursion at turn 11 there as well. Playboy Racing team back together for a run in GT3. Of course, the two different liveries, the 27 for Brian Walsh, the gold and black car, and the pink car, the 272 car for Glenn Miles. Now, you just saw there was a little bit of a stutter there on the broadcast. That's just a couple of drivers leaving and coming back into the server before the race starts. So some drivers just electing to restart their AMS installation and get themselves going again. Just actually trying to work out who the person is that has left and that we are waiting on getting back into the server. And I'm just struggling to see. It might actually be Rhodey, I believe, is the one that we are waiting on. He's not appearing on our timing screens at the moment, so hopefully all is alright there as this clock ticks down. Bagzy, what are the things you're going to be looking out for in tonight's race? It's a 60-minute sprint race. It's going to be fast and it's going to be furious. We think the pace is probably going to be somewhere around the 1 minute 37s, 38s, 39s in terms of the front runners. What are some of the key things you're going to take a look at tonight as to keys to victory, I guess?
Well, first off, even though it's a shorter race, you're still going to have lap traffic. There is a bit of a discrepancy still between the fastest and slowest people. So how you get through the lap traffic is going to be important. And that may come into play as to when you decide to pit, because if it takes about half an hour to catch up to the first lot of lap traffic, you know, as you said, minute 40 to minute 36 to minute 40, some of the slower people might be doing minute 41s, 42s. That's still going to be at 6 seconds a lap. You're going to be getting about 15 laps. You're going to be getting close to the time to pit as you're coming up to that lap traffic. So do pit then and avoid having to lap traffic and being inconvenienced a little bit, but then you're coming in a bit earlier, so longer stationary time, potentially a bit more touch and go at the end for fuel. But you know, it's that balancing act you have to make. So do you do that, or do you go through the lap traffic?
Yeah, lap traffic we saw come into play quite a bit during qualifying as well. There were a few occasions where some drivers came across slower cars that were actually on their fast laps. There was one we saw with Lewis Wedding coming across Coops in the stadium section just out of the Sachs curve, just through that little left-right chicane, and probably didn't realise that Coops was on a fast lap, and so too did Osrob. Osrob did the same thing. So that will be a bit of a challenge, because this place can get quite narrow in some sections, especially around the stadium section of the circuit.
Yeah, it certainly can. It makes it difficult to get past, and you don't want to lose that time, especially if you're in a close battle for the leader if someone's already pit. I was just seeing, it looks like the warm-up session's been restarted, so looks like that may be waiting for Rhodey to get back in, potentially.
Yeah, I believe that's the reason why that's the case. He's the only one that's missing out of the 14 runners that we had in the server for qualifying. He is the only one that is missing at the moment. I'm just looking to see, he's in the Discord in the race chat, so maybe having a few technical gremlins. So good of these guys to allow some time for him to get back in, given he's put in the time here. One of the drivers I want to pick up here is Lewis Wedding. So there he is. He's in the Loose Simsport garage. He's had a bit of an interesting week. He thought his PC had gone to PC heaven, or actually the CPU had gone to CPU heaven, but he ended up managing to figure out the problem on Friday night. So he's had a little bit limited running. Of course, if you're avid watchers of the TCR Oz on the Automobilista Australia YouTube page, you would have noticed that there wasn't a stream on Monday night, and that was because of that issue. So you might get a recap up between now and the next TCR round to take place next Monday, which will actually be the Monday before the Melbourne Cup. So a number of drivers will probably be looking forward to knocking a few beverages back, I'd imagine, after that race is over. But yeah, Lewis Wedding's had quite a bit of an interesting week to get here. So the question will be is, has he put enough of that practice in to be able to challenge for his fourth race victory tonight? Time will tell.
It certainly will, and we've got Rhodey back into the game, so straight on to the next session. No time wasted by Lewis, and the cars are jumping out to the grid.
Yep, we are getting a grid slowly populating, and then we will be ready to go for this 60-minute race. So It's taking a little bit longer to load in for some reason. I'm not quite sure why it's taking me a bit longer for some things to happen. Actually, there we go. I've worked out what the problem was. It was my keyboard flashing away at me as I tried to navigate the menu to get everybody back to where we're meant to be. And I think we're just waiting on a couple of cars. We're waiting on Wedding, who's just appeared, and the last one is Lime Mitch. So leaving it till very, very last minute as the clock counts down. And we're away on the formation lap behind the Camaro safety car. Bagzy, let's have a look at this starting grid.
First up, Brenton Foley, setting the pace tonight. The PBF Team Vodafone car, alongside him Will Devonish, the perennial second place competitor, but not winner so far this season. The main winner this season, Lewis Wedding, in third, which I believe is his worst qualifying performance so far, which is quite surprising. I see Noah Tara putting in an excellent qualifying performance for fourth place for Lone Wolf and Cubs Racing. Termo as well, a very good fifth place in the Jack Daniels Racing Camaro. Lime Mitch has not made it to the grid. He is in the pit lane still, so not sure what's happened there, but he qualified quite well.
I think I have an explanation for that. We'll get to that in just a second. Let's keep looking through this grid.
Alright, Phil Boak in the other PBF Team Vodafone car in 7th place. Mike Coulston in 8th for Flat Spot Racing. Ozrob in 9th for JP Simshed. Brody with a very good 10th place qualifying for PBF Team Trackstar. Brian Walsh in the Playboy Racing Ferrari is in 11th. Coops for Flat Spot Racing in 12th. Glenn Miles in the other Playboy, the pink Playboy Racing car, is behind his teammate in 13th. And Greg Tara, the other Lone Wolf and Cubs Racing Porsche, in 14th. So Lime Mitch, what's happened there?
So Lime Mitch was one of the drivers that ended up with a penalty overhanging from the race at Brands Hatch. There were a couple of penalties, as we detailed during the qualifying broadcast. Greg Tara had to sit out qualifying because of contact, and there was also Brendan Ross, who isn't here tonight, who was actually upgraded to a pit lane start. Lime Mitch was meant to miss qualifying. He actually took part in qualifying, so I dare say what's happening is that he is going to be starting from the pit lane. So let's see if we can pick up what exactly is going on here. And
That's
where is
very unfortunate.
he's actually still in the garage. So it was. He's actually still in the garage.
I think
so
that was
just waiting.
Here he goes now. I believe that was his best qualifying of the season as well.
Yep, there he is. So he's now at the pit lane line, just actually
And he'll
backing
have
it
to
up.
wait until they're going down the back straight, essentially, the back curved straight, before he's released.
Yeah, the Sector 1 marker comes up just after turn 4, so he's going to be about 20-odd seconds behind. So he's not terrible, but he's going to need to show a good turn of speed to try and get up to the back of the pack and start passing some cars. But anyway, let's see what happens. So pace car is coming in. 60 minutes on the clock. Now, they cannot launch until they get to the start-finish line. So they're going to line up here. Foley's going to control the pace. Foley, Devonish, Wedding. Great job by Noah Tara. And then behind him, it's Termo and Coulston. Here we go. Clock is running. We are away. And Foley gets a good run. Oh, there's a bit of a movement back in the pack. Is that Coulston looked like he got a bit of a shove? Yeah, so Coulston got a bit of a shove. And
Coulston's lost his rear wing.
Yeah, Coulston's got no rear wing. And he's done a really good job to try and pull it up there and save it. What on earth happened there? Let's get a replay of this, because this was very, very odd. Very, very early in the piece. So Coulston was sitting next to Termo. Oh yeah, Rody just got it all wrong. Just got his passing move all wrong and just ran straight over the right rear corner of Coulston's car. So that is a disaster, but also I think probably a little bit of poor driving from Rody on that behalf.
Devonish has come up the inside of Foley into the hairpin. So Devonish didn't get the jump on Foley, but he's taken the lead back. But Foley's going right back at him on the inside into the little kink there.
Yep.
After the hairpin, will Devonish get him in the braking zone? He will not. So quick thinking for Foley there to cut back after the hairpin and retake the lead. Yep,
good battle early on. So we did see Ozrob was very, very good under brakes in the hairpin, and looks like Will Devonish is the same. Will having a bit of a look down here at turn 11. That's a high-speed sort of approach to turn 11. You've got to get the car turned in. It's really one line through there. And this sets up a mouth-watering prospect if these two are already rubbing on each other and giving each other hurry up. and Wedding is doing his best to go with them. This leading trio is already broken away and has quite a handy buffer at the moment, as Lion Mitch has already been released. He's about to round up the unfortunate Mike Coulston in a couple of seconds' time. And then we look a bit further afield. Noah Tara is doing a good job here to hold off Termo and the second of the PBF Vodafone cars of Phil Boak. Noah Tara had a pretty solid practice session and backed that up with a pretty good qualifying as well. Of course, his father wasn't taking part in qualifying due to that ban, but he's doing quite a good job to hold his own here, and Ozrob tucked under the rear wing of Phil Boak as well. Let's have a look at the drag out of turn 4. Yeah.
Well, Mike Coulston through no fault of his own. He's just got to the pits now. He'd been overtaken by Lion Mitch by the time he'd got there, so that means he's going to have to two-stop this race, and he's going to have to spend all this time in the pit lane, which is really unfortunate for him.
Be hoping for a safety car. Just in the foreground as Termo is getting up the inside here of Noah Tara, but on the switchback, Tara looking to try and get some drive off, but he wasn't quite close enough to try and put the power down and wasn't quite in the right spot to retake that position. So Termo now goes through into P4. You saw in the foreground as we were focusing in on this pair that Devonish and Foley went through the hairpin side by side again. But unfortunately for Devonish, Foley's come out the other side still with the advantage.
And Lewis Wedding's just biding his time there. He's just doing what Mark Marquez likes to do, just sit behind and wait and look and observe, and then at the end pounce and destroy all hope that you had.
Yeah, I think he's probably doing a little bit of what we call it, what Lewis Wedding does, and that's just when he sits behind there, he's just going to use the drag, he's going to lift and coast and save some fuel and go that extra stop. So while the other two are duking it out, he'll just sit there and bide his time and then put the hammer down when the time is right. We've seen that time and time again, and it looks like he's doing precisely that. So fast laps coming in now on their first proper flying laps, and it's Devonish just fractionally quicker than Foley. Down the inside goes Devonish at turn 2. Job done, or is it? No, it's not. He runs a bit wide. Foley will get him around the outside at 4. So Devonish had a bit of another look this time.
Just out driving him out of the corners is Foley. He's just saying, sure, you can sail on by, but I'm going to take preferred line through the corner and get you on the switchback. Is he going to be able to do it again in the hairpin?
Well, looking for it 3 times in 3 laps. He's gone down the inside of the hairpin. He needs to put a block pass on. That's a better job. He got the tail just sort of stepped out a little bit there. It just arrested the momentum that Foley tried to get out of the hairpin. Although he's trying he's still got some mumbo. Going door panel to door panel with Devonish. He's fighting tooth and nail here, Foley. He does not want to give this advantage up, but he's leaving some space for Devonish.
Brilliant racing. They've been side by side for 5 corners now, and it's not stopping yet. And is Wedding going to get involved in this? He's decided better not, because he can't go 3 wide in this corner, and Devonish finally gets Foley as Foley yields, but he's back alongside again.
No, not quite, Daddy. Down the inside he comes. Oh, there's a contact! Wow. Now, I'm not sure who you pin that one on, but Foley's gone from first to third in a heartbeat there.
Foley locked. I think that one's on Foley. He locked up and slid there, and he would have ended up like Sebastian Vettel if there hadn't been Devonish's car to sort of bounce off of a little bit.
Well, let's see if we can get a bit of a...
holding together.
Let's get an onboard here. We'll get it from the bumper cam so you can see... Yeah, just understeered wide. So there it is. Understeered wide, mid-corner, getting on the approach to the Sachs curve. And he ended up just understeering to Devonish. So no harm done there, but just a little bit ambitious and skated it in, did Foley. And now it's Lewis Wedding's turn to have a go at Will Devonish. Here he goes. So he's already committed to the inside here. So through goes the number 89, through goes Foley as well. Did Devonish just roll out of it? I think he might have just rolled out of it.
I'm pretty sure he did. I think so too.
Oh, that's a very interesting move. So Will got the job done, and then maybe thought about maybe saving a little bit of fuel here maybe. So going to pull the old Lewis Wedding trick, make Lewis do the work out in front, and they'll play his game for a little bit. So great racing between these 3 over the course of the first couple of laps.
Yeah, he just went back on board and he full on let out of the throttle there. That's very strange.
Well, watch that one with interest then, because as we've been detailing, that's sort of a Lewis Wedding trick, just rolling out of the throttle and sitting back there and waiting. But now that Lewis has gone to the front, he's going to have to work a little bit harder just to keep that advantage. A bit further behind, Termo's trying to make some inroads. Noah Tara holding down P5. Greg Tara, having served the qualifying bans, moved up to 8th from the rear of the field. So that's a pretty good return from him so far.
Liam Mitchell's up to 11th from his pit lane start, so it looks like he did not have to wait as long. It's actually because this first sector is Brenton Foley sets the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah. Mike
The
Coulston,
first sector is so short, you don't lose much time here.
yeah, Mike Coulston has avoided going a lap down. He's got a new rear wing on that car. He's got quite a few hits, front side, rear side, as a result of what happened with contact on lap 1, which will no doubt be reviewed after this race. I dare say that will be a penalty coming for Rhodey for the next race. That was certainly avoidable contact.
And it's no fault of Coulston's either, and he's 40 seconds off the next person up the road, so
Yeah,
he's in for a very lonely race without safety car intervention.
yeah, he's behind the PBF, the Playboy pair of Miles and Walsh are the next two cars up the road, and Rhodey not too far ahead of them. Which is a shame for Rhodey because he had a pretty good qualifying to get up to 10th, but then threw it all away with a bit of a silly mistake there on lap 1. Probably just anticipated the start a little bit better than Mike Coulston did, but unfortunately for him, he ended up driving into the rear end. There's a bit of a flash of the lights there from Liam Mitch ahead of Rhodey, so I'm wondering if he's giving a bit of a flash to the car ahead of Coops. I'm not sure why that's for, because he's some distance behind him at the moment.
Foley's looking very racy up the back of Wedding here. At the moment, he's closed that gap in. It's less than 0.3 of a second, so is he looking to have a go in this next lap?
Osrob's just a bit further afield than probably he would like to be at the minute. He's just sort of eased out of it, I guess, a little bit. He was tucked in behind Phil Boak at one stage and sort of dropped away a little bit. What was his times at the moment? He did 1:40.5 on the last lap, so that's probably the reason why he's dropped away, because he's done another 40.4, so maybe he's going into a bit of a fuel conservation mode. Maybe he thinks he can't make it, or he's nursing some sort of damage or that. A bit further up though, Noah Tara has surrendered P5 on the run to turn 2 as Boak makes a move. A little bit of contact just on the exit of 2, but that's okay. There's not too much to worry about there.
Foley's about to have a look at Wedding.
Speaking of PBF pairs, he is about to have a look at Wedding, and he's going to get it done in the heavy braking zone. He went very late on the brakes. Allows some space. In actual fact, Devonish thought very quickly for a moment about having a look down the inside of Wedding at the hairpin there, but then very quickly again rethought his decision.
And Foley doing what Devonish couldn't and keeping the person who's overtaking behind him straight away. Oh, there's a big slide from Foley.
Yeah,
that
backed
keeps
it
together.
massively, backed it into the corner there at turn 8.
Back in there. But yeah, he's able to just put that block pass on like nicely and keep Wedding behind.
Nothing unusual about Foley with the tail end hanging out, is it, Bagzy?
Absolutely not. I was going to say Termo's doing quite a good job at the moment too. He's up in 4th place. Pretty lonesome 4th place at the moment. He was quite close to Boak and Tara when Noah Tara, that is, was ahead. So I'm not sure if there may have been a mistake from Noah Tara and Boak that has put this gap in there to Termo, but he's doing quite well. He's set a 1:39.1 on his last lap, compared to 1:39.5 for Boak, so he's still doing pretty well. It's Foley. Fastest lap of the race again.
Yeah, good fastest lap for Foley there, 38.261. Coming back to your point about Termo, I like to call him the all-rounder. He drives a lot of cars. He drives the supercars, he drives the TCR, he drives the GT3. So a lot of the guys that do this race in the GT3s, they drive a lot of the other cars too. Termo's a bit of a good all-rounder. He always picks up some good results. And he's doing quite well at the moment. More importantly, doing well because he is behind. Actually, he is the current leader in Silver Cup. So he was leading Coulston on a countback by virtue of place finishes. Coulston with a pair of 9ths, Termo with a 10th and an 8th. So that's where the tiebreaker is. So doing quite well in P4 is set for a good haul of points, with the unfortunate situation involving the flat spot racing car of Mike Coulston tonight.
Certainly is. Just looking at the gap is actually growing at the front. Foley's got almost a second on Wedding. Wedding is not quite able to break Devonish. So is this the track where Wedding finally isn't the best driver on the track? We saw that he was only 3rd in qualifying, which is comparatively poor for Lewis Wedding, which is, a damning with faint praise or something along those lines. But he's struggling today. Maybe he had indulged a bit too much last night and could be slightly hungover. Who knows? But he is struggling a bit today.
Yeah, Foley's now dipped into the 37, so we did expect we'd get a 37 or at least a high 37 in the race pace, with our pace notes saying we're going to get somewhere between 36 and 40 laps. And the pace in the practice session was in the high 37s at best, and we got down to the low 37s for qualifying. So Foley really pulling out some stops here. But of course, pulling out the stops means that he burns fuel. And of course, they've all had their stint to sit behind one another, these top three, over the course of the opening few laps. So who has been able to save a little bit of fuel, or the most amount of fuel out of all of them? Who can exercise the undercut or the overcut and make it work for them and make this race come to them in the second half of the race? That's what they'll be thinking about as they get close to the 15-minute mark of this race. It's how do they set themselves up for the second half of this race, because it's going to be all about when you pit and how your strategy unfolds from there. As you detail, Bagzy, the only person who's really lapped traffic at the moment is potentially Mike Coulston. He's only, if you look here on the circuit, as these guys are swinging through turn 11, he's just rounding Sachs curve at the moment, so he's not too far ahead, but he's doing pretty well to sort of limit how much time he's actually losing. As this leading three is starting to string out a bit now, I think Devonish has made a little bit of a mistake somewhere on this lap. He's just dropped away from Wedding now, so has Wedding decided it's time to drop the hammer and go after Foley?
He did set a fastest first sector of anyone so far. He doesn't set the fastest lap
PB though.
He does set a personal best just outside the 138, 138.032. So, and still, actually, I can't tell because Foley must have got a track cut.
Yeah, I was about to say, importantly, Foley got a track violation.
He has certainly closed the gap, because it was about 1.1 seconds this time last lap, and now it is 0.9 seconds. So, as they're going down the straight, though, Foley's slowly pulling away.
Foley's
not quite in the slipstream there.
Foley's track violation came at, I believe, turn 1. It was in sector 1 on that last lap, so...
so potentially a bit wide.
Yeah, we didn't detail that there would be some issues at turn 1. Well, it looks like most people have been behaving themselves. That's really the first strike that we've seen at turn 1 for anybody in this race. And granted, it's 15 minutes in, but you only get 4 of those as he backs it into the corner again.
Cool.
He's been having all sorts of lockups into some of these corners. It's not faster, but the car was certainly in the right spot for him to gas it up and get going. But no, definitely not faster around that corner. He's got a 1.2 second advantage at the moment, though.
We're only about halfway through this stint at the 45-minute mark, but we do know that Wedding is definitely one of the best when it comes to his pit strategy. He's putting in the right amount of fuel, and he's putting in the fast laps when they count. So he is the one to look for the undercut or overcut. It's one of those things where it doesn't have as big an advantage here. It's more down to the driver. Foley goes faster yet again.
Yeah, so he didn't purple all the sectors though, Foley. He only purpled the middle sector. Lewis Wedding had the first and third sectors purpled. So, actual fact, Lewis Wedding was only a tenth behind, 37.825 for Lewis Wedding on the last lap.
Half a tenth. He would have had the fastest lap if not for Foley also going even faster, and that was with that slide.
The slide through the middle sector.
Going pretty well. And we'll see Coulston's doing 140.4, so while they are catching him, it's going to take them a little while, and he's probably going to be the only one they catch. They might get to Glenn Miles by the time there's pit stops and maybe Coops, but the pace is actually going decently well from these guys. They're not going that much slower that they'll catch up.
There's the visual shot there that shows how far behind Mike Coulston the trio of Foley, Wedding and Devonish actually are as they're coming out of the drag out of turn 6, the hairpin. You'll just see them start to range. There they are. There's Foley just starting to range into shots. So the gap is actually, it's not going, coming down in huge chunks, but I dare say Coulston's probably got about another half a dozen laps, and then I think the leaders will be on him.
Oh, just saw Philip Boak almost got taken out by Noah Tara.
Yeah, these two have actually been keeping each other pretty
very deep.
These ones two have been keeping each other pretty honest. I was about to say that Noah was actually keeping within striking distance of Phil Boak. And Phil's had a bit of a torrid time in these cars over the first couple of rounds, And down into turn 8 is it? Oh yeah, big moment for Noah Turra. Just completely almost like he missed his braking marker whatsoever, and very lucky not to run into the back of Phil Boak on that occasion.
Looks like Brian Walsh has had an issue and is in the pits now. He's missing a bonnet and he's reversing and going forwards. There we go. He was just trying to find his box and wasn't quite getting it. So damage repair for Brian Walsh there, and he's dropped back to last.
Yeah, that'll be somewhere out. Probably, I would imagine, in one of the parts of the circuit where the walls are pretty close, such as the stadium section. I think he's probably had an off-track excursion somewhere. And
Just seeing a bit of a pitching between Noah Turra, Ozrob, and Greg Turra, all in Porsches, all getting close together at about the same speed.
where are they? They're currently sitting back in 6th, 7th, and 8th. So there's Noah. And then as we look a bit further away, there's Ozrob, and there's Father Greg honing into view. So they're all occupying the same sort of time frame at the moment, separated by about 4.5 seconds.
Just had Foley backing it in to the same corner. He's done it 3 or 4 times now, and lost a lot more time this time. He's lost half a second in the middle sector.
Now, I know Foley's sort of very akin to using the bars as Noah Turra goes deep for the second consecutive lap at the same corner that we're referring to, that Foley's backing it in. I know that Foley does a lot with fiddling with the bars in TCR, especially with the fact you can't change tyres, or you don't really want to change tyres in a 25-minute race. But when the tyres go off, Foley adjusts the bars quite a lot to make the car turn. I'm wondering whether he's having some issues in the GT3 car as making the car turn, or he's fiddling with the bars at different points of the time of the track. It's not something you want to be doing too often. The GT3 cars are usually pretty stable.
Yeah, well, whatever it is, it's cost him a lot of time, because Wedding is now certainly in the slipstream. And that car is looking a lot more taily than Wedding's GTR. His GTR looks quite planted, and he's going to get the advantage of slipstream here. Even though it's only a half-second gap, it's going to start coming down quickly.
Yeah, well,
Foley will be getting some slipstream as well from Coulson, but Coulson's got out the way.
Yeah,
so
well done, Mike.
it's not
Good
happening,
job.
but that gap is right down now.
Yeah, I was about to say Foley lost a half a second to Lewis Wedding on that last lap in terms of their laps. A 38.2 played a 37.7, and Lewis Wedding snatched the fastest lap of the race away. So Coulson might just try and tuck in on the back of Lewis Wedding here for a little bit, and maybe try and salvage going too far laps, and he backs it in again. What on earth is going on? That must be a very, very a nervous race car, or maybe he's just trying to commit himself.
He's breaking away later into there than he really should be. I mean, he's actually gained a little bit. He seems to be going fast through there still somehow. It's not as fast as he could be, though. All he needs to do is get on the brakes about 30 metres earlier, and he probably won't have that massive slide.
Well, he has been doing a fair bit of drifting in AMS, it must be said, Brenton Foley. So in terms of handling what's going on, he's probably right up his alley as Glenn Miles comes in to survey a pit stop, which is a bit early for a pit stop.
Maybe he's accidentally bound his handbrake button for something and he's pressing it when he doesn't mean to.
I don't recall seeing a handbrake button in these cars. Or an actual handbrake, rather, but anyway. The leading two have actually kicked away from Devonish here. They've really got a healthy margin. What on earth has happened to Will? He's doing 39s compared to the guys in front doing 37. So maybe he's just resigned for maybe trying to go for a shorter second stint, maybe trying to save a little bit of fuel here. I mean, it'd be better if he was doing it.
More be tyres going off and people not being able to cope with it as well as these front two.
It's a pretty frenetic pace at the moment out in front. When we sort of thought it was going to be 38s were going to be the common lap time that we'd be seeing, but it's the leader's doing 37, so that's quite a red hot pace. In actual fact, we're only about a half a second away from the times we're seeing in qualifying, so they're really pushing it.
I say they're pushing each other almost identically. The first sector, Brenton Foley 21.615, Lewis Wedding 21.613, so 2 milliseconds between the two as they went through the first sector. Their second sector's Wedding was a couple tenths faster.
A couple of tenths, actually a couple of tenths slower, actually. It was
slower, sorry.
Yeah, 10 to about 10 and a half
bigger
slower.
Number worse.
Yes, the bigger number equals worse, absolutely right. When we're talking lap times, bigger numbers equal worse. Nonetheless, it's been Foley that's thrown down the serious challenge to Lewis Wedding for most of the season to date so far. He gave Lewis a bit of a run for his money for early part of the Sydney Motorsport Park round. Then there was the epic finish in the Spa round, and in actual fact, Brands Hatch was Foley's worst round. He actually finished 4th in that race. So that's why he's 13 points adrift, as opposed to maybe about 10.
So if you look back, Greg Turrow finally got up to the back of Ozrob and then just made a mistake and immediately dropped back. So, and at the same time, Noah Turrow is closing in on Phil Boak. He 4/10 of a second in the last lap, and it's just been slowly nibbling away.
Yeah,
Foley's stepping it out in the hairpin.
Noah's doing it quite well here. He's recovered quite well. In actual fact, he was 4/10 of a second quicker than Phil Boak last time around, and the bulk of that is coming in the first 2 sectors. And he's a 10th quicker again through Sector 1. He was 2/10 quicker through Sector 2 last time around as well. So he's nipping away at his heels here. Just wants that 5th place back. Be a good result for Noah. I think that'd probably be his best, actually would be his best result of the season, even where he finishes right now. Probably one of his best results in all of the GT3 races that he's done to date.
Foley's come up on traffic in the stadium section. We mentioned it before. He's come up to Coops, and Coops has not really obliged him. Wedding gaining a bunch of time there after setting a purple first sector and a similar second sector to Foley.
In actual fact,
He might
Foley
take
ran
his fastest lap.
Foley ran wide at turn 10. We're just looking on the replay here as well. So ran wide at 10, ran wide again at 11. Oh yeah, and really had to thread the needle on the run down to Sachs curve as well, and took a bit of grass to go with it. So you're right there,
Actually,
Bagzy.
only cost him a 10th and a half, but now Wedding is right on him. That's the biggest problem, is that a 10th and a half was a good 50% of his lead.
Lock up into turn
And
2 as well.
Wedding
He's done that a
is right
few
there.
times.
That car is nowhere near as stable as the GTR, but it just seems to have that little bit of pace. Foley likes a loose car. That's no secret whatsoever.
No.
Wedding thrives on a stable car, and you just feel like Foley's much closer to the end of his season as Lewis Wedding goes for it. Big braking performance in that GTR. Foley's going to cut back and get the better drive. They touch. He runs directly into the side, stops him in his tracks, and Wedding has the position.
Good pass by Lewis Wedding. Good opportunistic pass. I was about to say that I think maybe Foley had gone for maybe a more straight line setup, given you've got the 2 big straight line drags in out of turn 2 up to the hairpin at 6, and out of the hairpin at 6 down to turn 7 through turn 7 and 8. But that's only half the thing that you need here. You need the car that performs with all the balance, especially around these corners. Lewis Wedding with a very nervous car through turn 11 there. Car wanted to get away from him, had to catch it, but he stays in the lead of this motor race for the moment.
Only the second lap he's really actually led so far. So the first time he's really had to lead in the stadium section, and clearly not quite used to it. It's when you're following someone, you get a bit used to it, just following their lines. Foley's not really dropping off though, half a second at the moment, but this is where the GTR is shining in the slower sections.
Yeah, the GTR's got a little bit more, I would say, edge grip, to use a MotoGP term, just coming out of some of these slower corners. But then the Dodge Viper has a little bit more mumbo in a straight line, and the GTR really needs a bit of a hole punched in the air to actually get the job done. Now, Foley was a bit better through turn 2 that time around. In actual fact, now he's going to have the slipstream on the run
He's
down.
going to absolutely sail past him.
Yeah, look at the difference in terms of straight line pace, side by side. Foley very deep under brakes, it must say. Maybe going for that little bit of a block pass, and actual fact got that done really nicely. So braked. So the braking performance is there for the Dodge Viper. It can go a little bit deeper than the GTR, but only just.
It's acceleration out of corners is where it's really excelling, as we've seen him get past and then immediately get back at people with the crossover. And it's really interesting how these cars are good in different areas.
Just in back of shot there, you could actually see going round the hairpin, Boak and Turrow, and they're both off the exit of the hairpin. What on earth is going there? Or going on there, rather. Let's see if we can have a bit of a look at what happened, because Noah was closing up this chute from turn 4 to turn 6. Here it is. What happened here? So, Noah went deep again. Oh, that's very, very deep. Got it stopped, but then they both just pretty much picked up the accelerator way too early and used all of the exit road at turn 6.
We've got Wedding right up behind Foley again. As they cross the line, it was basically half a tenth of a second between them. He's almost pushing Foley down the straight as he's locking a right front there. They're coming up to lap traffic as well.
Who's the next man on the list? It's going to be the 14th place man, Brian Walsh. So
that's the second time.
maybe the second time they will have caught him.
Yeah, he had a long pit stop when they first passed him. He's a little bit off the pace. Obviously carrying damage in that car.
Yeah, so he'll probably move aside, I'd imagine, hopefully on this run down to turn 8. Let's see how close
first person to pit as well.
All right, so first of our stoppers.
He was near Greg Tara, and between Greg and Noah Tara, so he'll be looking to jump Noah Tara there.
Looks like they've gotten past Brian Walsh safely as well, which is good to see. And you're right, Bagzy, looking through our list of pit men, it is Ozrob. Now, this is a little bit early. I'm not sure if he can get home from here without a little bit of lift and coast, but where was he in the list? He was sort of in behind Greg Tara, so... Or he was just ahead. Yeah, he's just ahead. You're right.
Tara.
He was between the Taras. He was in a Tara sandwich, so he's looking...
Speaking of Tara, Noah Tara is right behind Phil Boak now, less than a second.
Yeah, again, so honing in on the back of that Dodge Viper, the second of the Dodge Vipers. Lock up there into turn 8. And they're probably coming...
Rob's going to go a lap down here because the leaders have just crossed the line now and he's still exiting the pits.
Yeah, indeed he has. So
safe car here would be disastrous for him.
Absolutely. So he needs these leaders to pit and then the safety car to come out.
Into turn 2.
Yep, he's got some margin here. Foley realises he's there and then tries to take a bit of a later drive, but that's on the marbles, and that's very, very good drive that he's managed to get on the marbles as well. He doesn't care. He's really got some... He did the right thing. He stayed high and wide, let Lewis have the place, and then just went the old over and under trick, but that put him on the marbles, so he's managed to get some drive here. Lewis is going to fight the positions and argue it straight back. Block pass is probably on here, I'd imagine. No, skates it wide. Foley just drives out the other side.
Foley's just the king of the cutback today. He's just fine. Go down the inside. I don't care. I'm just going to get you when I take the corner with the optimal line.
This is a good show, though. This is a really good show between these two. Good showmanship, good gamesmanship, and good sportsmanship as well. They're leaving each other plenty of room, and this is pretty much picking up where they left off at Spa-Francorchamps several weeks ago.
It's coming up to Brody now as well, who's currently in 9th, so hopefully he has noticed them in the background as they come through, because they're in the stadium section now. It's very slow. Wedding's going to put up the inside.
Foley was wide at the Sachs curve. He was wide. He didn't get it turned in and used all that camber of the road like you're supposed to. And actually, Brody's come into the pit, so that's good timing for these two. The next man in the line for them is going to be the Ferrari of Mike Coulson. It's not Mike Coulson, the Ferrari of Glenn Miles, who will go a second lap down if they get close to him. And Ozrob's really dropped off the back of this lot as they run through turn 1 again. 30 minutes gone. So we expect to start seeing a few more stops happen in the next little bit. So Ozrob's already done it. Foley backs it into turn number 2. Wedding's going to try and pull the Foley trick around the outside on the marbles, but there's nothing there.
Drive in that Viper is insane.
I don't know how he's managing to do it. He's got a loose race car. So that's really he was running solo, so he was running all on his own, coming in from 4th place. So Noah Tara goes up into P4. Let's see who else decides to take the bait. So Phil Boak goes through, so too is Greg Tara, using a little bit of curb there. So Termo and Rhodey, the only men in the pits at this stage. That'll send Lime Mitch through to 7th place. He's yet to stop. As we cycle through the field, that puts Coops inside the top 10 for the moment.
My heart jumps into my throat whenever I watch Foley go into turn 8.
Rhodey released from pit lane, now out in 12th place. And Foley's just managed to kick away just a couple of car lengths here as we take the helicopter shot through Sachs curve. Now that's how you're supposed to do it. And now they're going to approach the Ferrari Glenn Miles, who I dare say could probably come into the pits and get his stop over and done with if he wanted to.
I think he's already pit at one point.
Yeah,
so
he's in now. That was the Brian Walsh car that we did see go in. So Glenn Miles is in. So these two have saved a bit of fuel. and managing to get on with the job. Now Devonish goes around again as well, so he's obviously got plenty of fuel in the tank. And then a bit further back to the Noah Tara Porsche, and then it's now Phil Boak in a Tara sandwich. Now Phil hasn't stopped yet either, so that means, in actual fact, we're looking at the times here. Phil Boak did a 45.4 on the last lap, so clearly an issue there. Tara with a late-minute decision. Noah Tara with a late-minute decision to come in, and Phil Boak follows, and that sends Greg Tara through into what will be P4 until he stops. So that was a very late decision for Noah Tara.
Termo was the person who Tara and Boak were trying to get past, basically. He was in 4th there, in 5th and 6th, so he's just currently coming up to the stadium section now.
Yeah, so he's approaching turn 11, so he'll comfortably
Wedding's
get past
made a
these
mistake
guys
as well at some point, because the gap's now 2 seconds. We've missed that.
Yeah, looking through the timing screens, I think it's in this sector somewhere he's done it. Let's have a look at the sector splits when they come up. So Foley's going to register a sector time of a 45.7 and Wedding a 46.7. So you're right, Bagzy. He did make a mistake somewhere. I'm wondering where that would have been. Their sector 1 times were relatively close, a 22.1 for Wedding and a 21.9 for Foley, so they're pretty close. Maybe Lewis had a nibble down into turn 6 and didn't get through. Foley comes in, Wedding follows. Wow, we didn't expect this. Normally one of them stays out. Lewis has had a moment, I think, looked like he might have been on the grass coming into pit lane.
He's certainly gained a fair bit of that time that he had. Has he overshot? No, he hasn't.
No, I'm just looking to see, is Foley taking tyres? I think it looks like he is. Yeah, he is. There we go. Car's going up, the rears are going up. Devonish comes in as well. Okay, so they all pretty much did about the same. So Devonish leads all but briefly, being in the pit lane. So the next man in the queue is Greg Tara. So he's looking like he's coming in this lap. And we look a bit further afield, Lime Mitch, we're expecting him in as well. And yep, in comes Greg Tara.
This could affect these guys if they're trying to exit as Tara comes past, because Tara is a bit further down the pit lane.
And Lime Mitch
as well.
So where's everything happening here? So Coops, Tara's through. Foley was the one we expect to move now.
Foley and Wedding both go.
Wow,
close.
That's extremely close. Did Wedding take a little bit less fuel?
Most likely, Wedding is always on point with his strategy.
Absolutely.
And they come out still in the lead by virtue of everyone else getting behind.
And Devonish is away. Now, how's Termo going? Because he's coming around. Oh, had a bit of a moment on the exit of the Sachs curve there. Heading down into the last couple of corners of the stadium section.
Termo should be okay, I think, because Tara...
Yeah, he was P4, so I think he'll be comfortable.
Yeah, and Tara's still taking fuel. I think what might have happened there is that Foley might have had a little bit of damage that got fixed, because we saw his car didn't go up on the jacks as soon as Weddings did. Weddings went up straight away, Foley's didn't. So I'm wondering if there was about 3 or 4 seconds of damage that was getting fixed there, and that might have caused the difference.
So Greg Tara comes out in P6. In actual fact, he's jumped Phil Boak, so that's a net gain for Greg Tara, because Phil Boak came in a lap ago, so the overcut actually for Greg Tara works a treat, but Phil Boak's going to have tyres up to temperature here.
Yeah, he's coming right back at him around the outside there, copying a page out of the Foley playbook. And side by side goes to that little side draft.
And there's lap traffic in play here in terms of the flat spot racing car just ahead of them, the 12th place man of Coops as well. So they need to be careful here. Tara on cold tyres down the inside. Can he get it stopped? No, he gives a bit of a dint to
3 wide
to Coops there, but 3 wide on the exit.
3 wide does not work in this corner.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't work it worked on the exit, but it won't work the other way. Phil Boak sandwiches his way through at turn 7.
Geez, Coops should probably just get out of this, and he's getting right in the way, unfortunately. And what's this all about? Ozrob is now right back in here. We've seen Lime Mitch went off a little bit in the background, but Lime Mitch from his pit lane start is very close to a potential 5th place here, because there's a very small gap between Noah Tara, Boak, Greg Tara, Ozrob, and himself.
Yeah, if all these guys come back together again, you're right. Lion Mitch has got a bit of pace on board that car. His best lap's a 39.0, so his best lap is actually quicker than all the cars ahead of him. Noah Tara 39.2 is his best, 39.2 the best for Phil Boak, so too for Greg Tara, and then Ozrob 39.4 is his best. So Lion Mitch has got some pace. If these guys all start to come back together, or especially the ones behind Noah Tara, so Boak, Greg, and Ozrob especially, Lion Mitch could pick up a couple of spots here before this race is out. We're past the half distance marker here, Bagzy. Let's just take a look and let's see how things are going. So we know about the leading two. They are quite comfortably clear of Will Devonish now in first and second. So Foley and Wedding. First of the JP Simshed cars is Will Devonish, third place man. So started on the front row, down one spot. Termo up one spot, so P4 for him. That's be his best result for the season if he can continue on. So too Noah Tara, only lost the one spot but from the start, but he is quite comfortably ahead of Phil Boak at the moment, and Boak in turn ahead of the other Lone Wolf and Cubs car as Foley goes into the mid-37s. Eighth place man is Ozrob. Lion Mitch inside the top 10, having started from the pit lane. And then Rhodey actually is the last man inside the 10. Then comes the two flat spot racing cars headed by Coops and Coulston. And then Walsh and Miles, the two Playboy cars, are the only two other cars on the circuit. So all 14 runners still going, which is great to see. And the race leaders have captured everybody up to 10th place. As Wedding, having a look down the inside. At the hairpin, Foley leaves him some space, so they run side by side. Let's have a look at this drag out, and well, the Viper's got some good launch out of that hairpin. Will it hang on through turn 7 and 8? As Wedding has a look at 8. Is he going to send it up the inside? He does. Cut back by Foley.
Sails on through. Foley's able to get him round the outside of the next corner quite easily.
Yeah, good exchange of places. Sorry, Bagzy, I cut you off just for a minute there.
That's all good. Yeah, I'm always happy to be cut off by action. That last lap, Wedding actually set the fastest final sector. So even though Foley set the fastest lap time, he had a bit of a lock-up into the Sachs curve, and Wedding was 0.3 faster just in the final sector, which is why we're seeing him so close at the moment. So Wedding's definitely got a bit of pace up his sleeve, because he set a lap that was at least 600 slower than his best lap. So expect to see potentially a Wedding fastest lap as well.
And on top of that, another track violation for Brenton Foley on that last lap in Sector 1 as well. Also track violation for Greg Tara. So a couple of people starting to use up their strikes with 10 or 20 minutes to go rather. So that's 2 strikes for Foley that we're aware of, if we haven't seen any more. So if he's only used the 2, he's got 2 remaining, but he doesn't want to be chewing them up anytime soon. He might need to just behave himself a little bit. I'm not sure where he's doing the damage. I think it must be at turn 1. And Wedding's going to have another look here. Commits to it very, very early this time. If Wedding can get the inside here like he always does, he tends to be in the better position going into the hairpin, because if Foley's up the inside, he can brake so much later and drive out without a problem. But they're side by side again, out of the hairpin. And Foley's going to have to leave some space this time. Wedding has to brake on the marbles.
Once again, Wedding's got the compromise line on the inside though.
Oh, not this
Foley
time.
can try and drive round the outside.
Yep.
But he doesn't quite get the purchase, but he's going to cut back again here. He decides not to go for the inside into the stadium section.
He's trying to distract him though. Oh, there's a safety car. Wow, so that changes everything. What's the safety car for? I'm wondering if it's a bit further behind. Oh, there's been a bit of an incident. I think Greg Tara's had a bit of a moment here somewhere. Let's see if we can pick up what's happened here. I think this might very well be the cause of our safety car.
Yep.
And
we've got...
yeah, contact. And it was Phil Boak turning Greg Tara. So little bit of clumsy contact. Just keep an eye out here. Oh, wow. And then reversed straight into the back of Ozrob. So that's what the safety car's for. That means the pits are closed at the moment. So that actually is a bit of a free kick to Mike Coulston in terms of his pit strategy, because of course he had to come in to repair that wing, but he's unfortunately a lap down, so that at least gets him back on the same strategy as everybody else, but he will be quite substantial distance behind. But
Looks like his front of his car is running to a Stobie pole as well.
yeah, he absolutely had some sort of a drama there on the front of the car. According to, that's the Mike Coulston car. It's missing quite a large amount of its front air dam there, in the dead smack in the middle, normally where the Acura logo would be. But some of these guys are racing pretty hard, even up to the safety car. Now, Brian Walsh doesn't look like he's been caught by the safety car, so he's ahead of the safety car, so that's all right for him. That means that he's a lap down. So these guys on lap 25, the race leaders, with Brian Walsh currently lap 24. He was about to go a second. Oh, he's on his 23rd lap. Sorry, he was about to go a second lap down. So he'll still be a lap down, but at least he'll be on the back of the train, which is good.
It looks like the biggest winner of all this is Lime Mitch. So he is currently 6th on the road. I'm not sure how that's going to go once they all catch up to the safety car and who it's going to say they need to be behind. But if he's in 6th, then he's back where he qualified, basically, despite starting from the pit lane, which is really good for him.
There he is on back of shot, actually going quite wide at the hairpin. But you're right, Bagzy, this absolutely plays him into play completely. He benefited enormously from that contact between Tara Boak and Ozrob. In actual fact, he was behind Ozrob when they came through on the scene of the accident and avoided it all.
Because on our track map from Live Races at amsoz.liveraces.com, if you want to follow along with us, there's the current train of cars from 1st to 5th, then Lime Mitch in 6th, and then a very long gap back to 7th. We can just get a replay of Ozrob going into the hairpin, because they're all going fairly fast. He had a very large lockup, so I think there's a lot of damage on the front of that car for where he hit Greg Tara.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, big lockup on the front left corner of that car, so he needs to come in this lap, so he's going to lose out here. He'll be down as far as 9th place. Yeah, all sorts of damage. The problem for Ozrob is he would have come in on the last lap, but of course there is a closed pit lane, so he would have ended up with a pit lane penalty on the resumption of racing. Now he needs to get it turned in here. There he goes. So he just got it in.
So he's only going to lose 2 places in the end because Rhodey in 10th is the first car a lap down.
There is some cars that are on.
He's going to struggle
with
to
lap
catch
traffic.
up to the. He's going to struggle to catch up to the safety car at this rate. Once he's put tyres on, fuel, although he probably won't want to put any fuel in, hopefully, so that might shorten the pit stop a little bit.
Now, Lime Mitch has come in here, Bagzy. Have a look at this. Lime Mitch has actually decided to take maybe some fresh tyres. Well, still, he's going to come he's going to come out in 8th place. Ozrob's going to be 9th, and you're right, Rhodey was the next man in the queue. So he's actually lapped traffic, so he's between Devonish and Turmo on the circuit here. And then back to Noah Tara, and then here comes the rest of that snake that was tucked in behind Ozrob when he came in.
It's not going to be that big a difference in tyres, but it could be the difference as Ozrob gets going now. It could be the difference that gets him past the likes of Greg Tara, Philbrook, Noah Tara, even Turmo and Devonish, if he's got that pace. Because we have seen Lime Mitch have some good pace. He's done a 138.7 as his best lap. Will Devenish's best is a 138.4, so he's definitely on the pace of at least Turmo and potentially Devonish, and will have the slightly fresher tyres.
Now, Brian Walsh and Glenn Miles have actually been released behind the safety car as well, so they're going to at least remain a lap down. Now, both those drivers were 2 laps down, so they're now only 1 lap down, along with Coops, Coulston and Rhodey, who's in the middle of this lead pack sandwich. Now the question's going to be, how much longer are we going to be under safety car for? Because Ozrob, you can see there, back a shot, just rounding the turn 6 hairpin. So depending on what the situation is, he might actually have to get a bit of a wriggle on here to catch the back of the train. He's going to have Brian Walsh in between him.
The safety car goes very slowly through the stadium section, so he will probably catch up.
Lights are still on the safety car as well. We have seen a tendency for these lights to go out rather late. Let's see how we go this time around. We probably might get one more lap, I'd say.
Looks like the lights are off.
Oh, here we go. So No, Ozrob's not going to catch the back of... I don't know if he's going to catch the back of this snake. Keep an eye on him for me, Bagzy. If he does, he's going to catch it at real... He's going to catch it at pace. He'll catch them at pace, so that'll be interesting. So first, second, and third. Then the lap runner of Rhodey. Then Termo's got the fifth place man of Noah Tara, Phil Boak, and Greg Tara behind him as we resume with 13.5 minutes and change on the clock in this race. This really turns it into a big sprint from here, doesn't it, Bagzy?
It does, and Osram had a massive run. It worked out perfectly for him. If it had been a second later, he probably would have gained a couple of positions on the start line. But as is, he's right behind Lime Mitch.
Good driving from Rhodey as well, just staying as far wide as he can, letting Termo through, letting Noah Tara through. Then a bit further behind them now, Greg Tara is the next man that's going to try and tackle him. Phil Boak in his wheel tracks, and then some lap traffic, and then Lime Mitch is in there as well. So keep an eye out for that 333, the Ferrari, coming through this lap traffic. There he is, getting the job done behind Phil Boak. And already Greg going defensive here. And up the inside, Lime Mitch down the inside of Phil Boak at the hairpin. So already trying to put those new tyres to good effect. But good drive off for the Dodge Viper. And Ozrob's, you did right, Bagzy. It's worked out pretty well for him. He's latched onto the back as quickly as he can of Lime Mitch and trying to go with him. Rhodey, don't... About to say, Rhodey, don't stick your nose down the inside there. That was very ambitious. You're a lap down, son. Stay in position.
Yeah, he's got to worry about Mike Coulston right behind him, though. So Mike Coulston and Coops have both two flat spot racing cars. He had a massive lead on them, but it's all been evaporated. He goes wide and into the side of Mike Coulston. So that Mike Coulston, a bit rude, barging his way through there. Yeah,
so Coulston getting back into 10th place, which is only 2 spots shy of where he started this race, but unfortunately for him, the car ahead of him of Ozrob is a lap in front, so not going to make any more inroads at this point in time.
Well, Lime Mitch inside of the final corner.
Yep.
Inside of the first corner.
This will be interesting. Boak backed out of it. So Boak knew the game was up, backed out of it. That actually gives Ozrob a little bit of a run as well, with Boak having to let out of the throttle. And Phil Boak goes to cover the line into turn 2. So Lime Mitch now is going to do his best to try and latch onto the back of Greg Tara, see if he can get a drag out of turn 4. And on the way to the turn 6 hairpin, let's just see if he does reel him in. That may be a little bit too far back to have a bit of a stab, or is he? No, thinking about it, not close enough to think to make a move stick. A lot of these drivers are actually running their lights already as well. Like, I'm a bit surprised, but it's just the running lights on some of these cars. I know the full-on headlights are a lot brighter than this, but nonetheless, a lot of drivers just making sure that any lap traffic around them, which is pretty much cleared now, is out of their way. But this is an angry little pack here. Greg Tara, Lime Mitch, Phil Boak, and then Ozrob doing his best to hang on to the back of them. And then a bit further up the field, Noah Tara is doing his best to hang on to the back of Termo.
We saw Lime Mitch very wide as well there, so he's lost a little bit of time for Greg Tara. Noah Tara and Termo. Noah Tara's gained on Termo in this last lap and a bit. Termo had got himself off by himself a little bit, but now he's got a bit of pressure for really the first time this race.
Yeah, speaking of being on their own, Will Devonish has comprehensively been dropped by the leading pair again. In actual fact, Lewis Wedding has really dropped the hammer and gone for it. Wedding actually registered a track violation of his own in that last lap, somewhere along the line. We're not quite sure what sector it was done in, but it has come up as an invalidated lap.
Ozrop having a go on Boak here.
Yep, down the inside of Phil Boak. Oh, Phil probably wasn't quite aware, I think, how close that Ozrob was, and that job is now done. So he turned down on him, but it wasn't too much damage, but Boak will probably have a bit of a look down the inside here at 5, and actually that's a fairly easy pass for the Dodge Viper at the end of the day.
2x2 there, 2x2 ahead as well as Lime Mitch.
Yep.
Goes to the outside of Greg Tara.
Has to
Greg
defend.
Tara sails in deep. Lime Mitch cuts in to the apex a bit better. At the same time, Boak and Ozrob are doing the same dance. Tara comes out on top in the first dance. Boak comes out on top in the second.
Yeah, good racing between these guys at the moment. Lime Mitch with fresher tyres. And actual fact, got a little bit of a run here on the outside of Greg Tara, but just going to stay close, I think. Will he send it down the inside at turn 11? It's a spot where you can pass, but you've got to be super, super committed to get the job done. No, he pulled out of it. In actual fact, that's really closed this pack up as well. Greg's like a cork in a champagne bottle here, but he's defending very, very well. Although that lock-up sends him wide. Yeah, it sends him off the racing line, but somehow he's managed to hold on to it here. Foley's on a flying lap ahead as well, we're seeing as well. He's set some pretty good sectors of his own as he tries to hunt down Lewis Wedding. In actual fact, it's a new fastest lap for Foley, a 37.506. And that gap has been cut down, looks like, to about 1 second now. Oh, very wide, Greg Turra, very wide. Took a bit too much curb at turn 1. That's the invitation line Mitch needs down the inside. Although, it only looked like he was going to be half committed under brakes there, but gets the job done.
Yeah, and Turra's going to get lined up now by Boak as well. Although Boak pulls out quite early there. He's not getting the slipstream. There he is. Back in. He's actually keeping out of that slipstream for some reason. I guess he's just expecting to out-drag all the way down the straight, but it's not happening. Tara's got a little bit extra top speed here.
Yeah.
And he's not able to do it. Oh, he's going very deep there. Line Mitch leaves the door open, and Tara's just going to take that spot straight back. Line Mitch getting wide on the exit there. That's not what he wants. So Tara, an incredible late braking move there. Line Mitch left the door open, then made a mistake, and Tara gets the position back.
And he's going to look at about down the inside here again, Line Mitch, but no, nothing doing. Big lock up from Tara ahead. Yep, Tara locks up ahead. Through goes Line Mitch. Through goes Phil Boak, or Phil Boak's going to have to go the long way round, and then Tara goes a bit wide again. Phil says, well, can I get down the inside? Maybe, or maybe not. No, backs out of it. Yeah, angry little pack this.
So unfortunate for Mike Coulson, because he's right next to this pack, and unfortunately a lap down, not able to participate in the battle, really.
No, I mean, if he had the pace, he could pass all these guys and drive away, but he'd have to do it pretty damn quickly. And then he'd still have to pass all the other guys ahead and get back on a lap if another safety car comes out. So
just dropped off the back of that pack. He's gone wide in the penultimate corner and onto the very slippery surface that we saw at Germany this year, catching out all the F1 drivers. And
yeah,
not so slippery here is ahead of them. Boak and Tara both going wide in the first corner.
Yeah, a little bit tail happy as well.
Tara has a 2.5 second gap back to the current pace setter, Lion Mitch. Is he going to be able to hold him off for the last 6.5 minutes?
Well, he's lost position to Termo as well in terms of how relatively close they were a few laps ago. Termo's now managed to get nearly a 3-second margin on Noah Tara as well. So I think he's pretty much broken the spirit there.
Half a second as they come through to the Mercedes-Benz stand.
Yep, through to the Turn 8 grandstand. No Mercedes cars in the GT3 World Challenge this season. Everybody swapping out of the GT3. Actually, there was actually meant to be a couple of them. Mitch Hathaway and Billy Dougal-Salonga were the last recipients in the GT3 World Challenge to run the Mercedes AMG. We haven't seen them for a couple of weeks, actually. We haven't seen them since round 1. That's how far back and long ago it was. The Foley now starting to apply the blowtorch to the back of this Nissan GTR. And they've really kicked away. Foley very, very wide the final corner. Let's see if that registers a track cut. It does. Actually, still waiting for Live Racer to catch up. It does not. In actual fact, it gave Foley fastest lap of the race. So there you go. A purple middle sector for Foley that time around.
A 137.1, so that could almost end up in the 136s.
And Lewis Wedding was a 37.7 that time around. All the damage getting done in the middle sector. So now Foley's just got to think about it.
Looks like Wedding went too wide in the first sector and didn't register a sector time.
Yeah, he didn't again. You're absolutely right. He has not. So he's chalked up another strike. So looks like he's got 2, and looks like Foley's got 2. 4.5 minutes remaining, or there or thereabouts. Sort of working lap 32. So we're going to probably just get inside the 36 to 40 lap window that we expected we were probably going to get with this race. Of course, the safety cars just dragged that back a peg or two. This is where the battle is at. We'll keep an eye on this. Let's have a bit of a look a bit further back and see what's going on with that big angry pack.
Still going out at hammer and tongs.
Yeah,
just got past
Phil Boak. Lime Mitch has kicked away from this battle as well, so he's now set his sights on trying to hunt down Noah Tara. And
he's very wide there, but he's gained a second in the last 2 minutes, and he's only a second and a half away from Noataro, so that's going to close up right at the end too. Quite right on the back of Lewis Wedding as they come to the line.
Foley on the back of Lewis Wedding, you mean? Phil Boak's a bit further
Sorry.
back in the pack.
Yep.
But you're absolutely right. All over the rear wing. So they cross the line with about 3 minutes 45 remaining. So there's probably about another 3 or 4 laps in this one. And it's coming down to the wire again. These two duked it out for 90 minutes solid a couple of rounds ago at Spa-Francorchamps and put on an absolute show to the point where they crossed the line and they were separated by a bumper bar. That's how close it was. And it's certainly looking like it might be that way again. Foley thinks about a move, now backs out of it. He's chased Lewis across the road a couple of times coming down into the hairpin, and then he's decided to get out of it and then just set it up and maybe try and get a cutback, but it's not going according to plan just yet. But we've seen this time and time again with people like Marc Marquez, just sitting back, waiting, and then pulling the trigger in the last few laps or so. Is Foley going to do the same here, Bagzy? What do you think?
I think that's what he's doing. I think he's sizing him up, just looking for that opportunity, working out where Wedding's weaker, because he knows that Wedding's going to get back at him later on.
He wants to pull
As
the move.
Lime Mitch has got past Noataro off screen to us, so maybe we mistake Noataro somewhere. So Lime Mitch up to 5th.
Looks like the move got done around the hairpin. Looks like he actually got it out of the drag at turn 4. And then on the replay, a little bit of a hip and shoulder too on Noataro. A little bit cheeky from Lime Mitch on the exit of the hairpin. But nonetheless, he's got that job done and dusted now, which is good to see. And then we go back a bit further afield, and we've got Greg Turra still managing to fend off Phil Boak and Ozrob. So he's, as I said before, he's a cork in a champagne bottle, but he hasn't quite exploded just yet. He's managed to just keep them at bay for a few laps here. Now Phil Boak's getting the hurry up from Ozrob as well. That just buys Greg a little bit of time. Still, commendable performance by Noah Turra. 6th place is his best result in the GT3 World Challenge to date. He's listed down here as a pro driver, so he's had a 15th, a 10th, an 8th, and a 6th now if he can stay where he is. So that's still pretty good progression. And of course, he has bragging rights in the family, outpacing his father.
I think at the start of the season he wasn't in the pro driver category, was he?
No, I don't believe that he was. I'm not sure what's happened there, but that's what he's been awarded. So we'll wait to see what happens with that. We might have to check with Lewis after this just to see if he's actually meant to be in Silver Cup. But according to the points sheet, he is indeed in the pro class. Termo's done a great job. He's had a really good solid run. Probably his best drive in the GT3 at all this season. So 4th place as it stands out of all the races he's contested across both the seasons this year. Will Devonish is just all on his own in 3rd place as well. All right, let's go back to the head of this field. We've got 45 seconds on the clock, so we're going to get another 2 laps. So we're going to get 36 laps will be the duration. These last 2 laps are going to be frenetic. It's going to be about when does Foley decide to pull the trigger and go for it.
I just think he's got the pace down that straight to get past pretty much every time, as long as he stays behind Wedding in this first sector. That's the thing. Do you want to go for the pass now, knowing that there's still going to be another lap, or do you want to wait and make it on the last lap, knowing that if you make a mistake anywhere in that first sector, especially along here, you're not going to be in position to get that overtake, and that might cost you the race.
Look at this, chasing him across the road yet again. Lewis didn't want Foley to have the slipstream, but Foley said, bugger you, I'm having it anyway. And now they're going to run side by side down to the hairpin. Foley's going to be on the outside here, so if he's going to get it done, he needs to go deep under brakes, but I don't think that's deep enough. Going to look for the cut back. Yes, he is. And Lewis was awake to it. Yeah, Lewis was very much awake to that.
The apex there, and that got Foley out of shape, and wasn't quite expecting it maybe.
Yep, that's gamesmanship for you.
But has Lewis now played his hand, and Foley knows exactly what he's going to try and do next time?
Yeah, I think you might be onto something there, Bagzy. I think that's precisely what Foley was doing. Lewis was completely awake to that one. He wasn't sleeping at the wheel at all. Brian Walsh getting out of the way, letting these leaders through. So that's really good to see. And then a bit further up the line is Glenn Miles, but he's well clear of this battle. So I don't think they're going to come across him unless he makes a horrible mistake between now and the end of the race. But what does Foley do? I think Foley's got to be on the inside heading down to 6th. That's how he's got to get the move done. Now, he might have to force the issue somewhere out of turn 3 and 4. One to
His
go.
thing has always been though being on the outside and cutting back, because he's done that whenever he's been defending. He's done that, and when he's been successful in attacking, he's done that as well. So I think he might just go for that outside line.
Down to turn 2. Foley just backs it in just a little bit, just got away from him here. Now he needs the drive. This is where he needs the drive out. He needs to get as good straight exit as he can. That's almost perfect. And now right in the wheel tracks. Now right off the apex. Now Lewis is inviting him to use the apex here, but he's not. Here we go, down the inside on the marbles. He's got some overlap here, so he's got a bit of room. Lewis is awake to it. And this is where Foley now just needs to do what Lewis did. Park it on the apex, but he
Big
couldn't
slide.
get it off. Big slide. And
He's shot the power down though.
how on earth did he manage to do that? That is a
Big
sensational
11s,
slide.
It's not over yet though. As they come into the braking zone for turn 8,
Needs to
who's
park
gonna
it.
Go where?
He parks it, but not
Wedding's
parked
gone
enough.
for it.
Wedding's gone for it, and a little
He's
bit of a
gone to
nudge.
A bit of a nudge, but that's all fair there for Foley, I think, because Wedding went sailing past him.
Yep.
I think this is Foley's race to lose now, because he's got all the pace, a last lap move, and beautifully set up. Has this got Foley the race?
I think it very may well have, and I don't think Lewis will argue the little bit of the bump there as well. He knows that he went in too deep into turn 8, although he tries to... I thought he was going to try and send it there for a minute at Sachs curve, but no. He decides just to pull it up, and I think even Lewis will have to concede that there won't be a bit of a drag out of this final corner unless he can really stick it up the inside here.
Oh, yes.
He's on the grass! He's on the
Try
grass!
and get it.
Well, no way through there. So Foley's going to finally break the Wedding stranglehold on this GT3 World Challenge Series 2 for 2019. So he gets the win. Great exchange between those guys, it must be said. So Wedding second.
0.3 of a second line.
And at the end of the day, Termo closed down the margin to third place man Will Devonish as well. So that's a great result for him. Lime Mitch, speaking of great results,
from the
pit lane start, and a great result too for Noah Turra, sixth place.
Lime Mitch did it the hard way as well. Took that pit stop, was back down to 8th place and passed the 3 people he needed to get that position. So well done from Lime Mitch.
Phil Boak in 8th, Ozrob is 9th, and then obviously Mike Coulston a lap down in 10th. Coops, Rhodey, Glenn Miles and Brian Walsh all get home as well. Good thing here, Bagzy, is we've actually got, as the donuts are performed at the second corner exit area, everybody got home. First time, I think, in a long time we've actually had a 100% strike ratio.
100% finish rate, although it's not quite done yet. Glenn Miles is still going around the track, but I doubt he'll have a race-ending crash between now and then. At least we hope not.
No, certainly hope not.
So yeah, Rhodey comes and gets 12th. Well, Glenn Miles is currently in the gravel trap, but I believe he'll be classified anyway, even if he doesn't finish this lap. So 100% finish rate, which is very impressive. No technical issues at all tonight. Everyone, even though there are a few smashes and some of these cars look a little bit worse wear, a la Mike Coulston, quite well done for everyone to keep it together this race.
No, you're absolutely right. And on top of that, the Noah Turra is going to have the bragging rights in the Turra household tonight, because I think this is the first time we've actually seen him finish ahead of his father, so he'll be quite pleased about that. Of course, Greg did have to start the race from the back of the grid with his pit lane penalty or infringement from qualifying from the race at Brands Hatch the last round.
I still think Noah had him on pace though today, because there was that safety car that bunched them all up and they were right near each other, and Noah was the one who was able to get away.
No, you're absolutely right. And on top of that, Noah did have some quite good early pace in the practice session earlier tonight as well. So I think you're right, Baggsy. I think he's won that one on merit, but still he'll be mighty, mighty pleased to at least have one up over his father for a change.
Certainly will. It looks like we have our podium sitters here, and we'll start with the race winner, Brendan Foley. Foley, that was a very entertaining race for us to watch. How'd you go those last 2 laps? It looked like you were just sizing Wedding up, going for seeing where he would go when you went, and then just got him right at the end there.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to plan it for the hairpin for the last lap, because I knew if I got it on the second last lap, he'd just get me back. But we both had really good pace, and I'm really happy with my drive tonight. That was, I don't even know what to say. That was just insane. It was a battle the whole time. He really made me work for it.
We saw during the pit stops, you came in with a little bit of a lead, but then you both left at essentially the same time. Did you have a little bit of damage on the car that got fixed and slowed your pit stop down a little bit, or was it just a bit of extra fuel?
I'm not 100%. It wasn't damage. It could have been extra fuel, but I can't. Like, there's no way I'm telling because of that safety car. But I actually reckon my entry to the pits was also pretty scruffy.
Fair enough, but an excellent race at the end there. At the start, you sort of had a bit of you and Devonish as well as when you were all going back and forth. Were you just trying to keep it together there, or were you wanting to actually lead from the front a little bit and try and make a gap?
I wanted to lead because I knew I'd done a lot of practice in testing before the series at this track, and I knew that I'll be fine on fuel to push 100% of the way. And I wanted to lead, and I really needed to put in a couple of good laps to break the toe so Lewis couldn't just fuel save in the draft, because I know he's an absolute expert at that. So yeah, I managed to get a couple of good laps in and get it out to a second and break that toe, and from there it was kind of just managing it.
Excellent race and very well done. I'll go to Lewis now. Finally, someone's got up to you and beaten you, Lewis, but it didn't come easy. How did you feel going that last couple laps, that battling there?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it wasn't just, I guess, the last couple of laps, the whole race. I don't think there was any more than, I think, maybe 1.5 seconds between us for the entire distance of the race. And I think the biggest gap probably would have been, I think, halfway through lap one. So there wasn't really anything between us. I know he said a much faster lap, but I think consistency-wise, the tyres were just a little bit better. But yeah, those last couple of laps, I knew it was going to be very interesting, and I was just sort of hoping to get drive out of the hairpin because I knew I probably wouldn't be able to keep. I knew he wouldn't go to the outside again on the final lap. He'd just send it up the inside and then probably just try and park it. And I had a decent run through the hairpin. I just couldn't get the drive, which is the biggest problem for me, I think, compared to his car around that track, is that I didn't have the drivers out of the slower stuff.
Yeah,
So
it did
yeah.
seem to be the way he was getting not only you but other people as well. Was just absolutely getting on the power earlier. As you were leading for the last few laps, and you did say that you saw him sizing you up there. Did you that little nudge at the end there when you went deep into turn 8? Was that all fair in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're both sort of, racing as hard as we can there, and like, I know it wasn't deliberate or anything like that. He was trying to make a move, I was trying to make a move, and yeah, to me it's fair. Like there's nothing malicious or anything in it. It wasn't like a dive from 100 meters back. It was just a little bit of a nudge as we sort of crossed paths a little bit. So no, that's perfectly fine.
Fair enough. Good race, continuing streak of podiums. And Nether, I'll let you do Will.
Yep. And Will, the third time, I think it is. Yes, it is. The third time you've visited the podium this season in out of the 4 races we've contested so far. Pace-wise, what was it like for you tonight? Of course, the guys out in front were quite consistently in the 37s. You were in the 38 bracket. Talk us about what your strategy and how you saw your race unfold tonight.
Yeah, similar to the guys up front. I knew I'd be fine with fuel, so just push as hard as I could. Admittedly, I went into this with a setup I didn't like, and I couldn't figure out a setup that I liked. So that qualifying lap was a bit of a fluke for me, to be honest. But yeah, in the race, I just wanted to hit 38s and got that lap after lap, so I was pretty happy with that. And can't complain with a third with how I felt about the car. So yeah.
Yeah, well, you're certainly not out of the championship picture with the halfway point having come and gone tonight as well. So you're 19 points out of first, you're only another further 8 points behind second. So still plenty to play for in the second half of this season. I want to get your thoughts on the races that lie ahead. So, of course, the next one is Jerez, and then we've still got Zandvoort, Fuji, and Adelaide to go. Out of those 4, 3 of them are 90-minute races. So, a couple of questions on that topic. Do you prefer the longer format or the shorter format? And out of those 4 races, which one do you think you're probably looking forward to the most?
GT3, I actually really like the longer format. I know in myself I get a bit distracted at the 80-minute mark, but in terms of racing these, I much prefer the longer races. two of those tracks I've never actually gone to, so it'd be quite interesting, especially November being quite a busy racing month as well. So looking forward to it.
All right, cool. So not particularly fussed about the tracks, just looking forward to the challenge that lies ahead.
Always.
Well, you've certainly got a challenge ahead of you. The top three here tonight have visited the podium a combined total of 8 times or 9 times this season alone. So perennial place getters, the only other person that's been on the podium has been Steve Bolger, and that was at Brands Hatch. So the podium spots are quite routinely occupied by these three gentlemen with us tonight, Bagzy.
Yeah, certainly the ones we are talking to most at the end of the race. I mean, you'd expect that they are the best racers, and they're providing us with entertaining races week in, week out.
Well, we've seen two absolute thrillers in the last 4 rounds of GT3, especially the Spa round, and now again tonight, duking it out at the front of the field. Just having a quick look at the provisional points coming out of tonight as well. So 2 points lopped off the Lewis Wedding lead by Brenton Foley tonight. So that leads now down to 11, 77 playing 66. And Will Devon is still safe in third place with 58. There's actually a tie behind for fourth place, I believe, just looking as my points stand. And there's actually a pair of, both Steve Bolger and Ozrob have got a third place each. But the tiebreaker looks like it's going to go to Steve Bolger with a fourth place at Spa, whereas Ozrob's next best is a sixth place. And then some of the big movers tonight, looking at Lime Mitch has shot up the order, so he's moved up into P6 with 30 points, and also Termo, the leader in Silver Cup, has really stretched his advantage out. Actual fact, jumps Noah Turra, believe it or not, and it's only 3 points behind behind Greg Turra. So there's still a lot to play for, and Termo quite comfortably leading Silver Cup. Unfortunately for Mike Coulston tonight, that rear wing being dislodged by Rhodey is certainly going to be looked at, but otherwise he was still, I think he still had some pace to challenge some of those guys toward the back end, if only he wasn't a lap down, Bagzy.
Yeah, he certainly would have. It's bad luck, and that happens. Sometimes you, through no fault of your own, you end up with these issues, but he'll come back and we'll look for a strong performance next round rather.
No doubt. Well, speaking of next round, it is Jerez, and I think we will leave it there for tonight. So 4 rounds in, 4 rounds to go. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks to Bagzy for his input. I'm Nether. Please drive safely. See you in a couple of weeks. Bye for now.